Hi everyone. If you are unsure of who I am, I've done an introductory in one of my first videos, but my name is Jules. And I'm sharing videos just about things that I've learnt and my healing journey from debilitating chronic illness and the healing power of food and how I've gone about doing that using medical medium, but also I guess I really want to share some of the mistakes and things that I've made too. But this video is going to be just my opinion and my thought and my thoughts and my experience about just the root cause to why sometimes we don't actually take care of ourselves. 4 years ago, my brother passed away. He was a drug addict. He died from heroin. We don't like to say an overdose, but I guess that's what it was. He had issues with drug addictions his whole entire life. He was 33 years old when he died, and I'm 2 years older than him, but his whole life he struggled with mental unwellness, drug addiction since he was about 12 years old, and when he was a child, a lot of anger and violence and issues, and he had ADHD and just a lot of, he was just really troubled, had a lot of demons, and I think he was a big reason why I've tried so hard to I knew that I had those same demons, and I knew that I had the same physical issues and the same genetics, and I had to really fight. I also knew and felt in my heart, even as a teenager, that as we were told by practitioners, it's genetic, it's all of these things. I really didn't want to pass it on to my children, and I wanted to have information to be able to help them. So when he died though, it was one of the hardest time in probably my whole entire life, and it was very lonely, it was very dark. I'd never had feelings like this before. The sorrow and the grief were undescribable, and losing a sibling, and although we didn't get along because of his issues, he was like my twin, and my body and my whole life took it really hard, and I think it's taken me the last 2 or 3 years to get myself back together. But it was almost, I kind of feel like it's like your spirit's been in a car accident and you're really damaged and injured and you're broken apart and there's blood and guts everywhere, and just like that takes time, a long time to heal. I think my spirit took a long time to heal, and I feel, really great now, but I'll always have scars, just like you would in a physical car crash or something that happens, quite violent to the outside of your body. Almost a year, I think people say time heals, but after a year I was worse than ever before, and I didn't really talk to anyone about the things that were going on for me. I'm religious, and all of that stuff wasn't really helping me. The things that you're told to do, and yeah, it was. And if anyone that knows me, I'm pretty ADHD too, really active, kind of hyper. But I would spend days, hours sitting on my couch eating chocolate, looking at a TV that wasn't turned on. I would get my kids up, I would take them to school, and I would come home and sit on the couch. And I even get teary kind of thinking about how sad I was and how numb I was. And I try to be strong for everyone else that was mourning, but it was, I don't know, it was just hard. And I prayed really hard. I needed to get better. I needed to heal myself. I needed to feel better because I was completely malfunctioning as a parent, as a human. And yeah, body was literally moving around, and I was dead on the inside. I met a wonderful lady, and I'm not sure if I have permission to say her name, but I'll put it in the link below. And I started counselling and working with her, and she mentored me and helped me for over 2 years. And the biggest lesson that I wanted to share for me in the healing was, one, dealing with a lot of trauma. My brother in our life, he had caused a lot of trauma. He was very violent. He was a drug addict. I don't need to tell you, if you've been in that situation, you kind of know about them. But it was years upon years of trauma, of violence, of difficult times. And so I had a lot of healing to do in lots of areas. But the most important and life-changing thing that I just didn't even realize and that I learnt was the power of my negative self-talk or my positive self-talk, and the power of compassion for myself. And so that I could reconnect, so my body and my spirit could reconnect and my spirit could feel safe with me, was that I had to love myself and treat myself kind of like I was a little child. I had to nurture myself, be kind, be gentle, be patient, long-suffering, and all of those things. But unconditional love and compassion was super important to healing my spirit. And I realized that I was hating on myself. I was my biggest bully. I was harder on myself than anybody else. I spoke to myself harshly, sometimes out loud, but mostly in my imagination. I would never speak to another human being the way that I would speak to myself, and the things that I would say to myself. And you're so stupid, you're so ugly, you can't do that. No one wants to hear from you. No one cares about you. No one loves you. You're unlovable. All of those things. I don't have to make a list, because we all have our own special list of negative self-talk. So I think even small children and teenagers are very aware of what I mean when I say that. And it was a shock to me to realize how awful I was to myself. And because I felt awful, I was being more of a bully to myself and hating on myself worse than ever before, and drowning my sorrows in chocolate and doing nothing. And I really desperately wanted to do destructive things. I don't smoke and I don't drink. It's against my beliefs. I don't want to, because I know it's bad for me, but I really wanted something destructive. I wanted to drink, I wanted to smoke, anything that would make my outsides match my insides, I wanted to do that. And I really came to an understanding of why people cut themselves, and is because they're trying to make their insides match their outsides. But luckily I had support from my beautiful friend, and she explained things to me. And instead of making destructive choices, I started making self-caring choices that were good for me, even though it was really, really hard. And I started with food. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I think my adrenals had like a massive long adrenal crash, and my body needed nourishment because I was literally starving myself. I didn't eat, I didn't shower, I ate chocolate and chips day in and day out for a long period of time. And I feel sad thinking about that time for myself. So I had to start with self-care. And I started with tiny, tiny, tiny little steps, by having my breakfast out on the patio, taking my shoes off, grounding my feet on the grass and sitting in the sun while I ate. They were tiny things, reading, sitting in the sun for a little while. I started yoga, and I didn't want to do any of these things, but I had to start doing something to help myself. I knew that it was my responsibility, that I could go down into the depths of despair and turn to drugs and alcohol and destructive things if that's what I wanted to do, because that's what I desperately felt like doing. But I had to make other choices. And slowly it got easier and easier and easier. But I've had to practice that really for the last 2 years. Practice changing my self-talk. Practice giving myself love and compassion when I'm being harsh on myself. Practice resting when I need to have a rest. Having the awareness of what's going on for me. Because sometimes I think we don't realize that our cups are empty and that we need to have a break, take a step back and think about what's going on for us. And socially, we're forced, or we're encouraged to just keep pushing, suck it up, suck it up, suck it up, suck it up, let's go, let's go, let's go. It's the worst thing in the whole entire world, is to do that. We're told that if we have a rest, that if we take a break, that we're weak, that we're a loser. That's what I felt. I was the strong one. I've always been the strong one. I have never broken down like this before. I have never been in a mess like this before. And so it was embarrassing. I had shame. I couldn't suck it up. I had no physical way of sucking it up. And I didn't have support. And it was my responsibility to get myself out of this big, gigantic hole. I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to meditate. I didn't want to do anything that felt good and was going to make me happy. But having awareness of what is going on for us is super, super important. And I think as women, I'm realizing now, when our cups are empty, which we've allowed them to become that empty, it's our responsibility. We become resentful. We blame other people for our situation, for how we feel. It's our husband's fault. It's our kids' fault. We feel empty. We feel disconnected. We feel constantly overwhelmed when our cups are empty. Everything's too hard. You don't want to help anyone. You're grumpy. And you're just constantly kind of irritated and agitated all the time. It's a horrible place to be. And I used to kind of blame everyone else. But it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm okay. My husband's not ever going to, really. My kids aren't going to, but it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm in a good space and that I'm in a good place. So having awareness of when we're not, checking in with our emotions, what's happening for me. I need to have a little break. Maybe I haven't been, and when my cup isn't full and it's empty and I'm, when I'm completely depleted and in deficit, sometimes I just need to have a little afternoon to myself, not doing housework, not doing dinner. I go for a ride. No one's going to die if they make their own dinner. My kids are teenagers, they can do it themselves. I go for a bike ride. I read a book. I have a little break. I catch up with a friend. It doesn't take very long for me to do things that I love and fill my cup again and continue on. It feels so good. Life feels better when I'm not constantly in a deficit and constantly depleted, but filling our cup and keeping it full is our responsibility. It's nobody else's. Taking a break, having a time out, having a rest doesn't mean that we're weak. It means that we're courageous and that we're strong. It means that you're wise. But no one is really going to look after us, especially the women. No one's going to really look after us. Maybe some of you might have amazing people around you, but it's still our job and our responsibility. And what I found is that when I know my worth and I love myself and I treat myself with kindness and compassion, I don't want to put yucky things in my mouth. I don't want to eat hamburgers. I don't want chocolate. I want to give myself the food that I deserve. So I feel like with any kind of healing, as I've observed and talked to so many different people and they struggle with the healthy eating, maybe check in with your heart first. Maybe see what's going on there emotionally and why you don't think that you deserve to be healthy and strong and feel amazing. because it comes down to soul holes. It comes down to the inside, and when we work on the inside first, the outsides get easier and better. As women, I do think that it's really important for us to put our oxygen mask on first, and I've heard that analogy a lot when you're on an aeroplane. You know, they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first. We don't have to be martyrs. We don't have to sacrifice our lives for everyone around us. That's not fair. It's not fair. Our children and our families and our friends deserve someone that is whole, someone that is healthy, someone that is happy, someone that is strong. Not someone that is constantly, just constantly dragging their butts and constantly miserable and constantly unhappy and constantly tired. You don't deserve that. People around us don't deserve that. And we deserve to be happy, and we deserve to feel vibrant and energized, but it is our responsibility, no one else's. And I think that's all that I want to say, but I think the beginning of all healing, emotional and physical, needs to start in our hearts, and to have a look there. It takes great courage. It takes great courage. I can't use my words, only the most courageous people will be able to have a good, hard, honest, genuine, authentic look at themselves. Only the most courageous. It's easy to bury our stuff. That's easy. It's not what's best for you, and it's not healthy, and it will eventually catch up to you because it will make you physically sick, it will make you emotionally sick. It takes great courage to have a good, hard look inside, and to have a good, hard check. And it's not a quick journey either, but it needs to be proactive. It's not just going to happen by itself. And I think that nurturing and nourishing and strengthening our spirits is really, really important. Whatever works for you. But there needs to be compassion, unconditional love for ourselves. And yeah, I think that that's really important. And I think that's all I want to say. All right. Thanks for listening in. Bye-bye.